Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters. Welcome once again to the Abundant Way Ministries Empowerment Session.
Good evening.
Good evening. Okay, we got 3 people on the call already. Forgive us for our tardiness. We had some technical difficulties, but we're back. Hey, Mahogany. We see you were on early, and we see
good evening, Sharon.
Sharon Edwards Sanders. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening.
Welcome.
Well, we've got an exciting topic again today. For those of you who have been with us, you know that we are talking about social justice and economic empowerment. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, just to introduce the Abundant Way Ministries. We are an economic empowerment, faith-based marketplace ministry. Yes. So we are all about trying to get us as a people to the next level, right? Because it's important for the building of the kingdom of God. We talk about building the kingdom of God, but we're trying to do it without any resources. That's very, very difficult. And we've come far too long to be still running around in that same circle. So this is a faith-based economic empowerment marketplace ministry. So it is definitely for those of you who are trying to advance economically, whether it be through your career, whether it be through investing, whether it be through entrepreneurship, business ownership, you name it. That's what we're all about. That's what we're here to support. Today, we're picking up where we left off in our conversation about social justice and how that relates to economic empowerment. I must admit myself, I was when I look at the topic, I was like, what does social justice have to do with economic empowerment? Yep. And then when you think about it, you realize it has everything to do with economic empowerment, right? Because last month we were talking about generational wealth, right? And when we talked about generational wealth, we talked about the fact that it's not just about your bloodline, but generational wealth is about community, right? And moving communities forward generation after generation after generation, right? When you think about it in that sense, it's very difficult to move communities forward from generation to generation to generation when there's systemic opposition. Do y'all know what I mean when I say systemic opposition? Meaning that there are systems in place, powers that be, that do not want you to succeed, right? And so we see it all around us. We use the words racism, and we use other words, classism, right? All of those are systemic vehicles of oppression. And it's hard to move forward when you have those things standing against you, right? The question is why? Why do people put systems in place to hold other people back? Y'all ever heard the term, the man got his foot on my neck? Why? Hey, Daddy.
Good evening, Daddy.
Why does the man have to have his foot on her neck? Well, here's the thought that came to my mind. Some people believe that they can't do well unless someone else is doing bad. And that actually comes from a place of insecurity, right? It actually comes from, believe it or not, a poverty mentality. So when I say a poverty mentality, it doesn't mean that you don't have money, right? It means that your mind is operating in such of a way where you think that the only way you can do well is for your neighbor to do bad. So you think that resources are limited. But a kingdom-minded person thinks just the opposite. They believe that God is the source of all things, and in God there is no limitation, right? So as the Bible says, I serve a God who owns the cattle of 1,000 hills. You see what I'm saying? The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. Jesus said, in my Father's house, there are many mansions. And he said, if it wasn't so, I wouldn't even told you. So when you think in those terms, you see a limitless God. And if I believe that we serve a limitless God, then I don't need to suppress you.
Right.
in order to succeed. In fact, I don't want to suppress you or oppress you. I want us to rise together. Amen. Let me put some of these up here. I like that one. Amen. Got one.
Yeah.
All right. So that's part of the reason, right? And that is also generational because it's taught, right? Just like racism is actually taught, it's bred in culture, it's bred in family structures, it's bred in different societal circles, right? Nobody's born a racist. Like when you're a baby and when you're just born, you were just delivered from your mother's womb. You weren't looking around to see who was black, who was white, or any other color.
Right.
You were oblivious to that. You were taught that as you grew older. And 9 times out of 10, you were taught that in your homes, in your community, in your social circles where you went to school, and so then that develops into this whole idea of one person or one group of people being better than another, right? And where it crosses, where it intersects with economic empowerment, is the fact that people assign monetary value to their own self-worth. So I'm better than you because I have more money than you. Right. And so then that becomes the weight by which we measure ourselves. Not us. But people. Right. And so then these people get into some kind of political power. They get into some leadership position, and they begin to impose their ideologies over a greater society. And that's what creates the systems. And so that's when we have the systemic oppression. It's in the system, right? How do you know it's in the system? I'll start with the key, which I believe is the key, education, right? When you look at education as a whole, you will notice that the quality of education differs depending on what neighborhood you're in, what side of town you live on. You got public schools versus private schools. And you got elite colleges versus non-elite colleges, right? And then when you go to different schools, you'll find out that even within the schools, they have access to different resources, right? And so the schools are where we're prepared to either thrive or not thrive in the economic playing field, right? So that's, to me, where it starts. And so when we talk about social justice, one of the things that I think we should consistently or constantly stay on the battlefield about. Because remember, I said when we're talking about this, is we have to fight. Mm-hmm. Remember last time I said we can't leave. Yep. We got to stay and fight. One of the fights that we must maintain is that fight on education. Mm-hmm. Right? We've got to continue to fight for the next generation to have access to great education, not just adequate education, not mediocre education, because that's the thing that's going to keep you held back.
Right. But we also have a responsibility as parents and grandparents and as teachers to also pour into our children at home, outside of school.
Absolutely.
Because the schools are only giving them limited information, right? They're teaching them limited things, especially when it comes to history. And they're not teaching economics. They're not teaching generational wealth building. They're not teaching any of this financial aspect of life that we need. They're going to need, down the line. So it's our responsibility also that we have to do teaching at home outside of the schools.
Right. Great point. Because maybe that's actually even more important than education.
That's really how we fight.
Yeah, because it's got to start in the home. And we have to take responsibility in the home first. Right. Because a lot of times what we do is we send our kids to school and we expect for the teachers to handle it all.
Yeah.
When really, who reinforces who is the question. You see what I'm saying? It's like we send our kids to school and they come home and then we stop there. We can't stop there. It has to start and stop at the home.
At home, right. Just like Sharon said, parents are the first teachers. Absolutely. They are. And really, I look at it as if when the kids go to school, it's almost like the teacher should be reaffirming what is being taught at home.
Right.
Right. Even to a level, well, you got this, the way of teaching math is so different than.
It's crazy.
It is ridiculous. I'm like, oh my God, what is this?
Right.
But we have to then, okay, let me learn how to do this so we can teach it at home. We can study it at home. And when you get to school, it should become natural. And it's just like, oh, okay, this is how I do this. And it should be like an advancement. Now you're ready for the next level.
Right.
So we should our teaching at home should get our children to the next level on a quicker pace.
Right. Yeah. And the reason why I said you just touched on something that I think takes a greater precedence. Education is definitely key in the schools, the school system. Let me put it like that. But the home is even more. It's even more pressing to deal with the home. And the reason I say that is because when we talk about systemic oppression, there is a systemic attack against the families,
the family.
Right? Which was before education. Because if you ever recall, like the Willie Lynch letter, it was intentional on how they separated families, took the father out of the household, made light-skinned and dark-skinned people hate each other, made you hate yourself for the color of your own skin. You feel what I'm saying?
Yep. Took
your self-esteem, your sense of dignity, broke up the family, right? And so now you have households, single parent household where there's a mother trying to raise the kids, the father is gone, and then they promoted that with the rules and regulations that came along with so-called assistance,
the
welfare system, because we'll keep giving you this money as long as the father is not around.
Right.
So now you gotta intentionally dismiss the father, right? And so now you have a broken family, and people start fighting to keep the family broken just so that they can get a paycheck.
A monthly assistance check.
Right.
Yeah.
So they intentionally attack the family systemically, intentionally cause disparity in our educational systems, right? And then when you get to jobs, it's raining in the sun. When you get to the working world, jobs, and the wages that we're paid on jobs, there's a disparity there as well. And so when we're talking about building generational wealth, it's difficult to build generational wealth when you only make so much money. Right? Because we talk about, well, you got to save, you got to give, you got to invest. But my living expenses, and I'm not even trying to ball out.
No.
My normal standard living expenses are so much, but I only get paid so much. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Whereas your counterparts might be getting paid twice what you're getting paid.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so then and it's not that you can't get there, but the road then becomes longer and harder. Right? Because of disparity in the wages that we're paid.
Can I just comment on Sharon's comment? Parents teach their children who they are. That is so true. And it really ties into this as well when you talk about empowerment and building wealth, because we grow up seeing and doing what we know, right? We saw great grandma, we saw grandma, we saw mom and dad. You were blessed to have your parents, both parents in the household at one point while you were growing up. I did not. My parents divorced early. My sister and I were younger, but so all we saw was the struggle. Right? We didn't see anybody investing. We didn't see anybody entrepreneurship. We didn't see homeowners. We didn't see, any of that, to the point where our environment kind of raised us to say, okay, this is how you should live.
And this is all. This
is it.
Yeah.
This is all, because that's all you see.
Right.
There is no how do you say? You told me to you should say it all the time. Exposure. Exposure. There's no exposure. So really, what's the way that children are at home, and especially if it's a single mom at home who's struggling and trying to raise the family by herself, then that becomes a teaching on the child, because that's all they see. And it's really, as the upbringing, even though that's what the mom or whoever is going through, you should teach your children this is not it. You have to change their mindset.
There's more to life.
There's more to life than what you see.
Right.
So it's the mindset that needs to be taught and needs to be shown, even though I can't show you right now physically, but I can engrave it in your head, in your mind. So as you grow up, you're like, yes, I'm not going to do this.
Right.
There's a better way.
Right. You hit the nail right on the head. Exposure. And again, this is where social justice and economic empowerment meet, because that systemic oppression does also come to limit your exposure, right? So if they can isolate you to a certain environment and make it difficult for you to see outside of that environment, then you don't even know what possibilities exist for you.
Yeah, that's how I look at when they built the projects in Chicago. These massive high-rise buildings, and they just piled everybody in these high-rise buildings. And it's like, okay, this is it. This is all you guys got. This is your radius,
right?
Right here. And believe it or not, so many people thought that was it.
That was it.
And that's where they stayed.
Never came out.
They never came out. They went as far as they can go to wherever they went, to the grocery store or where they shop or whatever. But they never ventured past the bubble. It's almost like when you, what TV show was that we were watching? And they were in, when we first came on, oh my God, the president.
Oh, yeah. I don't know that show.
It's like they were in a bubble.
They were in a bubble.
They were literally in a bubble. They was a self-made community. And that's how these government, especially when it comes to the welfare,
right,
the assistance, it's like it's catered to a certain environment, a certain culture, a certain area, and then that's it.
And you know what? Again, this is why I think we have to stand on that battlefield of education. I'm going back to that intentionally, because once you graduate from high school, if you don't go anywhere beyond that, you limit your exposure. If you are blessed to have an opportunity to go to college, I say go. And I would suggest go away.
Go away.
Don't stay at home and go away so that you can be exposed to other lifestyle, you're going to meet friends from all over the world, all over the country, all over the world, right? And you'll see how different family cultures interact, right? You'll be able to visit friends. Like when I went to school, my roommate was from Chicago. I had never been to Chicago, but because I met my roommate from Chicago, they brought me home with them one break. I think it was Christmas or Thanksgiving or something. I'm out of Chicago. Another good friend of mine from Uganda, Africa. I would have never been exposed to KK had it not been for Central State. You see what I'm saying? And all the other friends, I've got friends from New York and Philadelphia and Chicago, Indianapolis. I got friends all over the country because I spent 4 years at Central State. And had it not been for the opportunity to go and get the higher education, I may have never been exposed to all of these people. And we're still friends today. And when we help each other out, we think through things together. To this day, these are friends that I've had for 30 plus years now that you would never been exposed to had you not gotten out of Cleveland. Had I not gotten out of Cleveland and gone away to school. Mahogany says her roommate is from El Paso, Texas. Never heard of it until you met her. My point exactly. And that's where that exposure comes into play. Here's the thing. If you're never exposed to anybody outside of your immediate circle, you can't even imagine. And I'm stopping right there on that word intentionally. Imagine, imagination. You can't even think your way out of your own bubble. You feel what I'm saying? There's so much more than what we see right now. Even today, we've been living in Atlanta I've been here since 2003, so 22 years now. And we were riding somewhere the other day in a neighborhood, and you feel like you lost. Like, I didn't even know these houses were over here. Whole community's been sitting there the whole time. And we didn't even know they existed. Beautiful. I got lost. I know what it was. I got lost trying to get to the Tableau meetup group.
Okay, I remember that.
Never made it to the thing. Got lost and ended up in some neighborhood, and I'm looking like, dang, these people living good over here.
Well, that's also like the story you told me when you first moved down here, and Mr. Burkett was driving you around, and you were looking at these houses, these beautiful like little mansions they were, and you was like, what? I wonder who live in these. You thought it was white people.
Yeah, I said, dang, these white folks live good.
And he's like, these black people.
He's like, you'd be hard pressed to find some white folks over here. And so I started looking at the cars as they were driving by, and sure enough, black.
Yeah.
And I would have never known this had I stayed in Cleveland. Right. Whole different environment. And just I don't want to call it the mentality, but what do you call it when one group of people, black or white, it doesn't even matter, color doesn't matter, are resistant to help another person succeed. Versus here, I was meeting entrepreneurs and black attorneys and stuff like that, and they were just telling me how they got to where they were. If you want to do the same thing, here's what you should do, and let me give you a number to somebody you can call. I'm like, wow, they don't do this in Cleveland.
Yeah.
You know,
it's the selfishness,
right? But it's systemic, though.
Yeah, and again, it is.
It's a systemic oppression that plays on the mind, right? And it creates a sense of inequity, right? And listen to my words carefully, because sometimes I will say inequality, and sometimes I will say inequity. Both are important, but have two totally different meanings. Equality and inequality is a definite definite construct that we must pay attention to and deal with. But inequity is also just as important. A lot of times we only deal with inequality because we're measuring ourselves against other people. We're measuring what we have against what other people have. But inequity means that it has to deal with your value. You feel what I'm saying? And when somebody can reduce your value,
that's when they got you.
Oh my goodness.
That's when they got you.
That's to me, that's even more detrimental. Because when you start feeling like you have less value, or you devalue yourself. Forget about inequality at that time, because it's no longer even about you being like somebody else or being equal to someone else. You can't even see who you are supposed to be, who God made you to be. Let me see that shirt. Your shirt says, "I am fearfully and wonderfully made." That's what God says about you. And when you have a sense of inequity, you have no idea how fearfully and wonderfully made you are, because you don't understand your true value. Right. And all of that is systemic, right? Here's what justice does. So we talk about social injustice, but here's what justice does. Justice creates the conditions for empowerment, right? Because we talked about the responsibility. The thing that goes on inside your home, that's your own responsibility. And what I don't want to do with this conversation is put everything off on another group of people and say they all the man got his foot on our neck, and they, everybody holding me back. No, we have to accept our responsibility. Right? You guys are going to love the guests that we have coming on next week. Mr. Floyd Bryant. He's a entrepreneur. He's a social activist. He's a minister. He owns a bank. He owns a bank, and he's all about empowerment, empowering children, empowering the next generation. Empowerment means that you have a responsibility, right? So here's the best way I can describe empowerment. From a biblical standpoint. Remember the story where with the man at the pool of Bethesda. He would go to that pool every year. He'd been going to that pool for 30-some years, and he's sitting there waiting for somebody to put him in the water. Because when the water is troubled, that's when you're supposed to get in the water. And everybody jumping in the water, and he's sitting on the side because he's lame a little bit. Waiting for somebody to put him in the water year after year, and nobody's putting him in the water. And Jesus tell him, take up your bed and walk. In other words, Jesus, I need to go back and read that. I don't think Jesus ever laid a hand on him.
Nope.
He never said, my son, my brother, you are healed. He just said, get up and walk. Take up your bed. Stop laying down there. Take up your bed and walk. That's empowerment.
And I think he asked him. Did he not ask him, did he want to be
Do
healed?
you want to be made whole?
Yeah.
Do you want to be made whole?
And that's the thing. That's the question that we have to ask in order to empower ourselves. Is like, do you want it?
Right.
And if so, what is it that you want?
He didn't discount the fact that the man had challenges. And so that's what social oppression is for us. Those are those challenges. Those are the things that keep us laid down on our mat, on our bed. And Jesus says, you got to think beyond that. Take up your bed. What do you want? First of all, do you really want to be made whole? And again, this goes back to that vision, that exposure. Sometimes we don't want much because we've never seen what the possibilities are. We don't have a vision beyond what we can see. And so our desire then becomes small and limited. The Bible says God will give you the desires of your heart. The problem is your desire is small. Jesus said, you have not because you ask not. Right? The problem is if we allow social injustice to keep us boxed in a bubble, then you will never be able to imagine beyond what you see. Your desires will stay small. Your wants will stay small. You feel what I'm saying? You'll start talking small, like if I could just have just this, right? And you can't build kingdom with that kind of mentality.
Right.
Again, you got to go back to the purpose of building generational wealth, right? It's not just so you can have money in your pocket, but it's to bring communities up. And it takes money, it takes resources, it takes power, it takes influence, and you cannot get that if you're thinking small. I was listening to a business program where the guy said, if you want to have a successful business, you have to have a successful model, meaning that you have to model yourself after a business that's successful. And he said, the problem is most people choose a small model, and it takes no more effort to choose a big model than it does to choose a small model. You feel what I'm saying? Renewing of the mind to come to the right mindset.
Daily.
Daily. All right. So the reason social justice is so important because it creates conditions for empowerment, right? It levels the playing field, right? So as kingdom builders, we have to stay on the front line, fighting that fight, so that the playing field can stay level, which then gives the next generation a fighting chance. Right? So if we're fighting on the lines of education and we're fighting on the lines of fair wages, fighting on the lines of access to capital, fighting on the lines of ownership. So these are the things that social injustice fight against or promote. And these are the things that we have to fight against. Fight for. We've got to fight for education, fight for fair wages, fight for access to capital, and fight for ownership. I can't tell, we're in the real estate business. I can't tell you how many people call us always wanting to rent. And when we look at their financial situation, we had to tell them, Do you know?
Mm-hmm.
Do you not know that you can buy a house right now?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't.
Yeah.
I didn't know my credit score.
That's the first thing they say. Oh, I can't buy right now. My credit is such and such. And it's like, but have you researched?
Right.
Have you looked? There's so many programs and stuff out there. Have you asked anybody?
Right.
You just automatically assume things because of what you've heard, of what somebody have told you. But if you go to the resource of somebody that's in that, a realtor in that field or whatever it is you're trying to get, the outcome will be so different.
Right. And granted, some people may need a little time to get some things in order, to get some things in the right place. Right. I get that. The problem that I have is we're not even thinking about ownership. You feel what I'm saying? And you can't get anywhere there's no such thing as generational wealth without ownership.
I remember I used to have that thought. I used to say, I don't want a house. I used to say that all the time. Your daughter
told me the same thing.
Yeah, I don't want a house because, well, see, there you go. Yep. Generational teaching. Right? Not even know that you're teaching it. It's just stuff that you say and stuff that you do. Yeah. Your kids watch.
They pick up.
And they pick it up. But I should say all the time, I don't want a house because I don't want to cut the grass. I don't want the upkeep. I don't want to make the repairs. And I don't do any of that.
All that costs money.
All that costs money.
Not realizing that the upkeep, the grass cutting, the maintenance and repairs, you're actually paying for that in an apartment.
Somebody else.
Yeah. If you're renting an apartment, you're actually paying for it.
Yeah.
Through your rent. You feel what I'm saying? Yeah. But you'll never own that place.
It will never be yours.
It'll never be yours. And you never will generate the leverage that you need to take you to the next level over time.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
And so we've got to keep letting people know how important ownership is. Right.
It's very important.
It's very important.
Very important.
Own your home. Own some property. Own some land. Some investment property. Own some stock. Right. Ownership doesn't stop with just a house. You feel what I'm saying? And when I say own it, I mean we have to truly try to get to the place of ownership, not just having a mortgage. Remember, we talked about what a mortgage was.
Yeah.
It was a dang mahogany. What was it? A death pledge. That is the word. The word mortgage literally means death pledge. You're making this pledge until you die. Right? When we talk about ownership, while you may have to start off with a mortgage, we're trying to get you to understand you don't have to die with a mortgage. Right. So you may have to start off with one, but do it strategically so that you know that in X amount of years, I should be able to pay this off so that I don't have to continue to pay that interest. Right. Because as the Bible says, the borrower is slave to the lender, right? And economic empowerment is all about freedom. Generational wealth is all about freedom. And you can't have freedom if you're a slave to the lender, right? So we've got to think ownership. So yes, because we don't have access to fair wages and we don't have the fair wages because we don't have the adequate education. You see how all of this stacks on top of each other, right? And because we don't have access to the education, to the fair wages, then they don't want to give us the capital to be able to go out and get the ownership. You feel what I'm saying? So it all stacks on top of it. It's systemic. It's planned. It's laid out that way. So we have to stay on the front lines fighting that fight.
Yep.
All right. Number 2, empowerment without justice is incomplete. Right? So there are some people who are empowered. Right? So yeah, we live in a big world, a big world now. Not everybody is living the same life. You know, some people are struggling and others are not. You feel what I'm saying? Black, white, or indifferent, right? So some people have adopted the ideas of empowerment, the ideals of empowerment. You know, so we understand that we understand the value of our job, right? But then we also understand that in order to get to where we're trying to go, we've got to be able to do something over and above that. So we started our own businesses. So that's empowerment, right? It causes a little extra work, a little more time, right? But it's empowerment to say that if anything ever happened to this job, at least I have something else going on that I can fall back on. At least I have something that I can build with. That's empowerment. And saying that I'm not going to sit back and wait for somebody to give me something. I'm not going to sit here and wait for somebody to come rescue me. I'm not going to sit here and wait for somebody to give me a job.
There it is.
Right? So empowerment means you're not sitting around waiting on anybody to do anything for you. You're taking initiative and responsibility to make moves for yourself, right? Empowerment says, okay, I know, since I know that education is key, I'm going to try to get the best education I can to give myself a better shot at having higher wages. If I can get higher wages, then I have more access to capital. If I can get access to capital, then I have a better chance of getting ownership of houses, land, you know, stocks, and whatever it is, right? Empowerment says, now that I know those things, I'm accepting my responsibility and I'm going to play my part, do what I have to do. I'm not waiting for a handout, right? I will accept the hand up because at the end of the day, life is all about relationships. I may not be able to do it on my own, but if I open my mouth and tell people what I'm trying to do, somebody might say, I can help you with that.
That's it.
But that's empowerment, right? So it's one thing to be empowered, right? But empowerment without justice is still incomplete. You feel what I'm saying? So let's say I did that for myself, right? But you are still oppressed. And you sit right next to me. I got all kind of money in my pocket and you're broke. That's empowerment. That's incomplete empowerment. And that's what happens in our communities, right? So we've got some people who are rich and famous, living right next to, and I'm not saying literally, not in proximity, living right next to people who are struggling, who look just like them. Empowerment without justice is incomplete. So we got to teach people how to build wealth by addressing those systemic barriers, right? What kind of systemic barriers are we talking about? In the real estate world, there's a term they call redlining, right? So redlining means because of the color of your skin or your nationality or your race or your sexual orientation or whatever it is, I'm gonna make sure you don't live on this side of town. I'm gonna draw this line, and if you're black, you're gonna live on this side of the line. If you're Jewish, you're gonna live on this side of the line. If you're Hispanic, you live on this side of the line, and we're gonna live on the other side of the line. And so, as a real estate person, whether it be the agent or the lender, there was a thing that was going on in the real estate industry called redlining, where they systemically made sure that you lived in a certain part of town, just like you said, in the projects, right? So that injustice says that we've got to fight against that redlining. We've got to fight those wage gaps, right? Because those wage gaps still do exist, right? I could be on my job and could be the smartest person on my job, right? And still make $20,000 less than someone who doesn't look like me on the job and who has to ask me questions on the job, right? They'll hire someone to be my supervisor that I got to teach, right? We gotta be able to address those issues. Address predatory lending. 2008, that real estate market crash was all because of what they call predatory lending. And what does that mean? That means that certain banks were just giving people loans knowing they couldn't afford it, setting them up for failure. And sure enough, when the deal went down, all those people that got them loans and gave God the credit for it, ooh, look at God. Look what God did. No, God didn't do that. They got foreclosed on. End up on the street trying to find a place to live, right? And lost a bunch of money in the process of doing that. Predatory lending, right? It sets you up for failure. All those things, redlining, wage gaps, predatory lending, sets you up for failure and frustration. It's systemic, right? So you see things have changed over time. So they put laws and regulations in place to kind of to offset or thwart against that. But you can still see it peek through, you know.
It's still out there.
It's still out there. It may be under a different name, disguised, you know, in a different way. We've got to be able to recognize it and stop it. Because God's vision of justice includes freedom, restoration, and stewardship, not survival. We took pride in being able to survive.
Yep.
You know, I could get by on Vienna sausage. Look at me. All I need is peanut butter and jelly.
Yep.
Is now, don't get me wrong, it's good to know that you can. Right? So I even look at us. And reason why I think we're a perfect match is because we feel the same way. Yep, we live in a 5-bedroom house today, but we both said if we lost it all tomorrow, we would still be all right. We could go to a 1 or 2 bedroom and still be just as happy. You see what I'm saying? It wouldn't make us jump out a window. You feel what I'm saying?
Right.
Right. Not one that's too high. No, just saying.
But that's the difference though, because I think I know for me personally, is that I know I've been on the other side of the coin. You know, I've been on the side where the struggle, I think Sharon said it a little ways back, the struggle was real.
The struggle is real.
Yeah. And so I know what that feels like. And so if right now it's like, okay, you know what? We got to downsize.
Yeah.
So
right.
I still got a house.
Right.
I still got my mind. I'm still, you know.
Let me say this. I'm glad you said that, because I think a lot of times when we talk about wealth building and empowerment and stuff like that, yes, the goal is to always move upwards and forwards. But the way life works, it's gonna go. There's gonna be some ups and downs.
Always.
Sometimes you will take 1 step forward to take 2 steps back. But to me, real empowerment says, even if I experience a setback, I can get back up.
That's right.
Have you ever lost a job? Have you ever been laid off? Have you ever been through a divorce? Have you ever, you see what I'm saying? Lost a car?
All that.
You feel what I'm saying?
All that.
If you let that stop you,
then that's
if you think that's the end of the world,
it's not. See, that's the thing. I think a lot of us are set on the possessions. and possessions come and go.
Right.
But the knowledge,
right.
If you have the knowledge and you have the know-how of getting, building wealth and getting, being entrepreneurship and doing other things to say, hey, I may not have a job right now, but I know how to run this business. I know how to do this. I know how to do that. And even if you don't know, you say, hey, I know who to go to help me do this and that. It's not, wealth is not material. Wealth is knowledge.
And knowledge is power.
And knowledge is power.
But knowing is only half the battle. Listen, ladies and gentlemen, we're gonna cut it off right there. There's more that I could talk about. I want to go into how the church has a responsibility when it comes to both social justice and economic empowerment. A lot of times, especially the Black church, thought that their only responsibility was social justice, because especially when you look at the civil rights movement. But even near the end of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s era, he started talking about the transfer of wealth, the wealth transfer, right? Which a lot of people think is what actually got him assassinated. When he started talking about building equity, he saw it way back then. He did start transitioning from just equality and start tapping on the door of equity. And that really, started setting some people off, right?
Yeah.
So we're gonna deal with that next week, because we've got a special guest coming who can speak to that much better than I can. Minister Floyd Bryant. He is a licensed member of the gospel. He's an author. He's the co-creator of a board game called how do you say it?
Entrepreneuropoly.
Entrepreneuropoly. It's like Monopoly for entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
It's a board game. It's a combination of Monopoly and the cash flow game. So most of you have heard of Monopoly. Not everyone has heard of the cash flow game. That's a game that was developed by a well-known real estate guru named Robert Kiyosaki. I have the board game and we play it online.
Yep.
We haven't played it in a while.
We haven't.
But we love that game too.
Oh yeah.
So this guy, he combined the two. He combined Monopoly with the cash flow game. He's a certified life coach, president of a national lending company, which includes an FDIC-insured online banking called Alternative Capital. That's his own bank. A Black man with his own bank. It's an online bank, A+ rated by the Better Business Bureau, to provide funding and startup funding up to $30 million. I was going to say $30,000.
No, that's $30 million.
$30 million throughout the United States and USA territories. Listen, I'm not going to spill all the tea right now. All I can say is y'all need to be here next Tuesday at 7:30. We are going to be starting on time. Listen, this guy is heavy. And his wife is heavy too. I hope that she chimes in if she's available. They together they have a nonprofit called the Floyd and Gwendolyn Bryant Foundation, and through that they provide cultural awareness. They do summer camps for kids. They do all kinds of stuff. And so, listen, you guys come back next Tuesday, and we're gonna dive deeper. He's going to peel back the layers of this onion, and we're going to talk about the intersection between social justice and economic empowerment.
Yeah, I'm excited.
I am so excited. I am so excited. So listen, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to end it for tonight. We thank you guys for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you guys back here next week. Same time, same station, and we love you. And good night. Oh.